I stood in the rain outside the church, watching the black umbrellas bloom like dark flowers over the graves, and all I could think was, this is the day my life ends twice. The casket was closed. Dad had always hated open caskets, said he didn't want people staring at him when he couldn't stare back. I kept waiting for someone to hand me a tissue, or at least look at me with pity, but everyone just shuffled past, murmuring condolences to my husband, Mark. He stood there in his charcoal suit, shoulders squared, accepting every handshake like he was the grieving son-in-law of the year. No one seemed to notice that my hands were empty, that I hadn't even been allowed to place a flower on the lid. Inside the church earlier, during the service, I'd felt the first real crack. The lawyer, Dad's old friend, Mr. Hargrove, had come up to me in the vestibule, his voice low, eyes darting toward Mark. Your father left instructions, he'd whispered. Very specific ones. We need to talk after this is over. Alone. Mark had appeared right then, sliding an arm around my waist like he was steadying me. Everything okay, honey? He'd asked. Smile perfect. But his fingers dug just a little too hard into my side. I nodded. I always nodded. Back home, our home, or so I thought, the condo smelled of lilies and coffee gone cold. People milled around the living room with paper plates of deviled eggs and ham, speaking in hushed tones about how peaceful Dad looked, how he'd lived a good long life. 83 years. I'd spent most of them trying to make him proud. He'd built things, houses, businesses, trust funds, and I tried to build a family. Mark and I had been married 12 years. No children, but that was okay, he'd said. We had each other. And the view from the 32nd floor of the downtown high-rise, he'd insisted we buy 5 years ago. $30 million, give or take. A palace of glass and steel overlooking the river. I'd never questioned whose name was on the deed. Why would I? Mark handled the finances. He always had. Around dusk, the last guest left. Mark locked the door, turned to me, and said the words I still hear in my sleep. We need to talk about the condo. I was wiping down the kitchen counter, nervous habit, when he said it. The rag stopped moving. The rain tapped against the floor-to-ceiling windows like impatient fingers. What about it? I asked, keeping my voice light. He crossed his arms. It's time we make some changes. Your dad's gone. Things are complicated now. I felt the air shift the way it does before a storm breaks open. Complicated how? He walked over, slow, deliberate. I had the locks changed this morning, while you were at the funeral home picking out the flowers. He pulled a new key from his pocket, silver and shiny, and set it on the granite island between us. You're not on the title, Sarah. Never were. It was in my name from the beginning. For tax reasons. Protection. You signed the papers, remember? I stared at the key. My reflection in the window looked small, blurred by rain. I signed because you asked me to, because we were married, because this was our home. Was, he said quietly. The will reading is tomorrow. Your dad left you some stocks, a few accounts. Enough to start over somewhere smaller. I've already packed a suitcase for you. It's in the hall. My throat closed. The lilies on the table smelled suddenly rotten. You're locking me out. Tonight. The day we buried my father. He looked almost sorry. Almost. It's business, Sarah. Nothing personal. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, listening to the rain, feeling something inside me fold up small and quiet, like a letter no one would ever read. I didn't touch the suitcase in the hall. I just walked past it, past him, into the guest bedroom we never used and closed the door. Not slammed, closed. Quietly. The way you close a door when you're trying not to wake someone who's already dead. That night I lay on the stiff duvet staring at the ceiling fan turning slow circles. Every few minutes I heard Mark moving through the apartment. Ice clinking in a glass. The soft beep of the security system arming. Footsteps pausing outside my door like he was listening for sobs he wouldn't hear. I didn't cry. Not then. Tears would have given him something to measure, something to win. The next morning Mr. Hargrove's office smelled of old books and lemon polish. He shut the door behind me before Mark could follow. Sit, Sarah, he said, voice gentle but firm. The way Dad used to speak when he was about to deliver bad news wrapped in love. He slid a thin folder across the desk. Your father came to me 6 months ago. He'd been watching, listening. He wasn't as frail as everyone thought. I opened the folder with hands that felt borrowed. The first page was a copy of the condo title, dated 5 years back, just like Mark said. My name nowhere on it. But clipped behind it was something else. A second document, notarized the same day, a quitclaim deed Mark had never filed. It transferred full ownership from him to me. Dad's handwriting in the margin. Hold until needed. For Sarah. In case. I looked up. He knew. Mr. Hargrove nodded once. He suspected Mark was rearranging things. The prenup you signed before the wedding. He never trusted it after Mark pushed to buy the condo in only his name. Your father had me prepare this quietly. Mark never knew it existed because he never checked the county records again. Too confident. My chest hurt like someone had pressed a thumb hard against my sternum. Why didn't Dad tell me? He wanted to protect your marriage as long as he could. He said you loved Mark. He hoped he was wrong. Mr. Hargrove paused. He wasn't. There was more. Bank statements showing transfers Mark had made over the years, small at first, then larger, into accounts I'd never seen. A life insurance policy on Dad that named Mark as beneficiary, taken out 2 years ago without my knowledge. And the will. Dad hadn't left me some stocks. He'd left me controlling interest in the family real estate holdings, quietly restructured last year to keep Mark's name off everything. I sat there feeling the floor tilt under me. All those dinners where Mark had talked about our future. All the nights I defended him to Dad when Dad asked why we still didn't have kids. Why Mark traveled so much. I called Dad old-fashioned, protective, paranoid. I was wrong. When I walked out of the office, Mark was waiting in the lobby, scrolling his phone, looking bored. He stood when he saw me. Everything settled? I met his eyes. They were the same hazel I'd once thought warm. Almost, I said. He reached for my arm. I stepped back. Just one step. Enough. We're going to the condo now, I told him. Both of us. There's something you need to see. He smiled, small, tight. The smile he used on waiters when the steak was overcooked. Sure. Let's go home. I didn't correct him. Not yet. We rode the elevator in silence. 32 floors. The mirrored walls threw back our reflections. Him composed, tie straight, jaw set. Me still in the black dress from the funeral, hair damp from the drizzle outside, eyes calm in a way that scared even me. When the doors opened, the hallway smelled of fresh paint. Someone had touched up the baseboards overnight. Mark swiped his keycard. Nothing. He tried again. The light stayed red. I reached into my purse, pulled out the spare key Mr. Hargrove had given me that morning. Dad's old master key from when he still owned half the building. I inserted it. The lock clicked green. Mark's face changed then. Not anger. Not yet. Confusion. The kind that comes right before understanding hits like cold water. Inside, everything looked the same. The river view, the white sectional, the orchids on the console table. But the suitcase he'd packed for me sat untouched by the door. I walked to the kitchen island, set down a thick envelope and slid it toward him. Read it, I said. He opened it slowly. The quitclaim deed. The will excerpts. The bank records. His eyes moved fast at first, then slower, like he was trying to outrun the words. This can't be filed, he said, voice thin. It is now. Filed this morning. The title's in my name. Has been legally since 10:30. He looked up. You can't just. I didn't. Dad did. He saw what you were doing long before I did. The transfers. The policy. The way you kept pushing me to sign things without reading them. He waited. He watched. And when he knew I wouldn't see it on my own, he made sure I'd be safe after he was gone. Mark laughed once, short, bitter. He hated me. He loved me, I corrected quietly. That's different. He stepped toward me. I didn't move. Sarah, we can fix this. We'll talk to the lawyers. No, the word came out soft but final. Like closing a book you've read too many times. You packed my suitcase the day we buried him. You changed the locks while I was choosing his flowers. There's nothing left to fix. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he turned, walked to the door, and left without another word. The elevator dinged. Gone. The condo was quiet after that. Too quiet. I stood at the window watching the river move slow and silver below. For the first time in years, the space felt like mine. Word spread fast. Family first. My sister called crying, then angry. I knew something was off with him, she said. But I didn't want to push. Friends from Dad's old circle sent cards, flowers, quiet offers of help. At the reading of the full will a week later, Mark didn't show. His lawyer sent a letter instead. Short, professional, offering to settle amicably. I declined. I kept the condo, sold the cars he'd bought, gave the stocks to a scholarship in Dad's name. Started small, Coffee in the mornings on the balcony instead of rushing out the door. Walks along the river path where Dad used to take me as a girl. I learned to sit with the silence instead of filling it. Mark moved to a smaller place uptown. Last I heard, he was dating someone new. I don't hate him. Hate takes energy I don't have anymore. I just let him go. The way you let a storm pass. Sometimes I still smell lilies when it rains. But the scent doesn't choke me now. It reminds me that endings can be clean, even when they hurt. If you've ever had someone you trusted turn the key on your life while you were grieving, you know the ache isn't loud. It's quiet, deep. But you also know this. The door they locked can be opened again. Not by them, by you. Would you have handed him the envelope and walked away? Or would you have fought longer, louder? Tell me in the comments. This is Broken Trust Stories. If a story like this ever helped you feel less alone, hit that subscribe button. There are more voices waiting to be heard.